redevelopment of this whole area will be your legacy, or it will be cheap to the residents?
No, it's the residents. I mean, the residents are the ones who have led this process, who have made the difficult decisions and pushed us to build the right community for the families that live here. So I'm proud to help. But the hard work and the people who have to live through the change and the people who are going to have to risk their homes in the hopes of getting better homes, those are the residents and they deserve the credit.
We are currently living in the Rob Ford nation, and it's a rewinding of many social services and things we are used to. So what is your vision about on the upper level, because you are a councillor and there is another thing on the...
When you take a look at what we've achieved here in Alex Park, the changes we're going to bring to this neighborhood, without needing to raise taxes or create new programs, but instead finding a better way to build this neighborhood, to create the wealth that's needed to support this community and to make sure that the educational components and the recreational components and the support for the schoolwork and what have you. When you take a look at how we're rebuilding Alex Park, what I often say is that the city needs more Alex Park, but to get things started here, Alex Park needs a bit of help from the city. So it's a true partnership, but this is a way of allowing communities that have been marginalized economically or culturally to make a better life for themselves and to play a significant role in changing the way their communities work, and I'm very proud to help them.
Is it true you are running for the mayor next time?
I've been asked to think about it, and I'm thinking about it. I have no answer at this point, though. But thank you for the question.
We prefer that.
I like this word, though. I do like to stay.
So what do I want to ask you?
It's a lovely night. Just so you know, we do have interpreters that are here, and I was hoping that each interpreter can identify themselves and let us know what language you'll be translating in. So if you need the translation, they're around. So. En español, por favor. Muy importante. En français, s'il vous plaît. Bien, please.
Please allow people to speak language, so raise hand so I can come close them.
Okay, so the translators are sitting in the back. Sorry. Good evening. For those who haven't met me, my name is Adam Vaughn. I'm the city councillor for the area. Tonight's meeting serves a number of different functions. First and foremost, the main part of the meeting is to talk about how, when we start to move people from house to house or into new houses, how the moving and the transition will be managed and what needs you need addressed, how they will be spoken to. And on that, we need your input, but to remember the button that I'm wearing, which comes in 3 different languages, but zero displacement. The most important principle throughout this entire process over the last couple of years has been to remember that nobody leaves the community. Nobody leaves the neighborhood while we fix your houses and build a better tomorrow. But that doesn't mean you won't have an opportunity to move into one of the new houses, and it doesn't mean that we won't have some moving around that has to happen. To build new houses, much like making an omelet, you've got to crack a few eggs, you've got to make some demolition. but change is what we've embraced, and so change is what we're going to talk about tonight. We're also going to update you on where it is in the sorry. I can't hear you, sorry. That's right.
Does that mean I'm still under here, or do you move up?
Yes. Those questions will be answered.
That's not part of the chair, but it's still.
Yeah, your status as a tenant doesn't change just because you're moving into a newer, better unit. But the other things we're going to be talking about today as well is where we're at in the planning stages. There's been a bit of a delay in getting it to community council, and we're just going to explain why that's there. And if there are any other questions you have about the process, please feel free to stand up and ask those questions. So with that, I'll let the officials take it over, and I'll be here all night to answer questions if there are questions that some of the other staff can't answer. But this is an important night to get out in front of this process and to make sure that whatever anxieties or needs or special needs that you have as a family or an individual are accommodated as we move the neighborhood towards a better future.
Hey everyone, my name is Jeff Cantos, and I'm with the City of Toronto, and I'm the community planner that's been working with TCHC in the Council's office on this project. And so, as you see on the screen, I'm going to give a very, very, very brief planning overview, as the Council said, to tell you where we are in the process, and then I'll pass it off to the meeting to my colleagues. So, to start, so where have we been? TCHC has submitted their applications and plans to the city, and city staff have been looking at those plans and reviewing them and checking them off in terms of the city's requirements. And we've been reviewing it, and there's been changes to the plans that we can discuss. So on February 7th, TCHC and their planners resubmitted new plans. And what's next? So first off, we're here to consult with the tenants. We're here to hear from you and tell you about the housing matters in terms of the housing replacement and the assistance that's to be a part of this whole project. And from there, planning staff, myself and my colleagues at the city read a report to Community Council, on which Councillor Vaughan sits on, that will have policies in place made for Alex Park. So specific policies for this development to guide the future growth. From there, that report goes to Community Council, where members of the public, including yourselves, have an opportunity to come and speak to the councillors who will be voting on the approval of this project. And you will receive notice far in advance when this happens. And then it goes to City Council for consideration. And then, once it's approved, there will be more detailed designs where an architect comes in and starts to design each building in the future. And then there's a phased construction between 10 and 15 years. From time of day one of construction, it'll last about 15 years through to completion.
How many years?
10 to 15. So this is what the plan looks like today. It's the revised plan. So very, very briefly, some of the changes that were made was that Vanoli Street now goes all the way up to the Central Park. Some of the townhouses have changed so that there are front doors on streets, so to make it easier for you guys for the community to get pizza delivery, front door access and addresses. And some of the buildings were changed in the middle. There used to be a mini park here, but we've made it one bigger consolidated park in the middle. And then some of the buildings up here also changed. So not major changes, but changes that had the tenants and the members of the mind. So I want to speak about the other projects that are happening in the neighborhood. Scanning Court, the community center, is going through a master planning study as well. So there, city staff is doing a study with the members of Scanning Court for the future of the community center. And it's to include the library, obviously. The other part should be the hospital, potentially OCAD, and also a development partner.
We need to add the gym too.
That, yes.
We
the
need
community
to add
center
the gym,
will
yeah.
stay.
Yeah,
The community center will stay, it'll just be newer.
sure.
Ryerson Public School, next door, is also going through a master planning process. So they're not at the stage where Alex Park is. They're still creating their plan and doing their consultation. So they're very early, but it's also coming down. Toronto Western Hospital, like,
What's saying that this school are coming down?
sorry, the school, the plans are being made. The school will most likely move, but stay on the site. Stay somewhere else on the site. Not exactly where it is. They're doing the planning right now, so there's no plans built or no architectural plans built right now, but they're discussing, they'll be going up to the community soon. There's a question?
If you're doing all this rezoning, we stand in found residential area, it's always going to go commercial.
We're striving for mixed use. So commercial, residential, there's going to be some institutional, like if OCAD comes in, it's introducing a new use.
What is OCAD?
Sorry, OCAD is the Ontario College of Arts and Design, the university, the Arts University, just down Dundas Street.
So the art gallery, is they're thinking of coming into our space?
Not Alex Park space, but by the community center. They're a potential partner in the development. Nothing is firm. It's still in the planning phase.
So this is basically to raise funds for your development of our area?
No, this is the Scatting Court development is completely separate
So
from.
we're selling land off to them for their use?
No,
If it's so.
no, it's going to be partnered. But again, it's a very early stage, and completely separate as well from what's happening here on the Alex Park and
We
TCH.
live in this area, so when we're walking around in this area, we can see that the whole area, bigger than our immediate area, is being rezoned. There's the school that was by, on his dad's, it's rezoned to a condo. There's one that's down on Soho and Richmond or Adelaide, gone to a condo. All around here, there's tons of places that say up for lease, all kinds of new stores, things coming in. The whole face of the area has changed. It's massive. It feels like kind of like a new beach area. So it's not a small project.
Just because we can't stop private developers changing the land they own into something else. That's the city is.
But my fear is how are we going to protect our right in terms of what we're paying for rent so that if it doesn't go too far through the roof, we can't afford a place to move or buy or
And
rent in here.
this gets back to your question earlier. The Alex Park Study Atkinson Co-op revitalization keeps the same number of units, the same tenant models, and the same protections in place that you currently have. All it is it's a way of building new and better housing for you. But what Jeff is doing is showing you that this isn't the only part of the neighborhood that's looking at making changes. And so they just want to bring you up to date and show you that change is happening in other parts of Dundas as well. But they're not tied to this project, they're not dependent on this project, they're not financed by this project, and this project doesn't finance them. There's no relationship between them. He's just giving you a context.
I have a question. Is there any percentage of commercial and residential in your planning policy?
There's no percentage that, usually we want a commercial on the ground level, on the ground level, so that it animates the street, so that people can see inside and out, but there's no hard number that we work towards.
But basically it's a residential project, right?
Primarily, yes.
Primarily.
But on Dundas, if you go back to the site plan.
So the commercial, we're encouraging the commercial uses to be on Dundas, so that people can see in and into and out of the buildings, but primarily the interior to the site will be residential.
Thank you.
So the commercial is forecast primarily along Dundas. So these along Dundas, those will be storefronts, and some of them will wrap down into this area here. And the idea is that there's been a conversation with the residents over the last 4 years that two things are required in this neighborhood. One is more services close to the family, so you don't have to send your kids far afield to pick up a quart of milk or to get what they need to run the family home. But the other thing is that families in this neighborhood have expressed an interest in having access to commercial space to run businesses. So the hope is that not only will there be commercial space on these new buildings, but that some of that space will be available to the community to help foster a sense of, help folks in this neighborhood start businesses and make a living for themselves. So it's not just about rehousing the community, it's also giving the community the financial capabilities to be a stronger neighborhood. But in terms of percentage, we've identified where the areas are that the commercial will be. We haven't yet, we've just hired the developer, and we're just starting to have the conversation about the individual buildings. And these buildings come late into the project, but we're just having those conversations now about how they'll be designed. And there will be a follow-up meeting to this one around those design issues. But this meeting is about when we start down in this quadrant, most of it's parking lot, but not all of it's parking lot. And if we have to move somebody from one house to another, how are we going to do that? What are the financial assistances available? What are the relocating your phone, your cable, that sort of stuff? How are we going to manage that? How are we going to pay for the movers? All that sort of stuff to make sure that while change is happening, it doesn't cost you money to be part of that change, above and beyond what other choices you might make.
General about the project.
Sure.
I can see that a lot of mature trees are coming down. Right? That's obvious by the way the space is being used. And I see that, is there a commitment to replant trees and make sure there's as many or more trees?
There will be many more trees and much more public parkland actually. And it'll be set up but these are public parks that will act as connected. These green areas here are yards and private space. So everything you see that's green there will be green. So there'll be a lot less asphalt, a lot more trees, and a lot more public park and private green space for gardens and the kids to play without having to be too far away from the house they live in. But yes, in some of these areas up here, over time those trees will come down. But the hope is that as we move forward, and we know where the green spaces are, we can start planting those trees quickly so that when the community is rebuilt, there is a strong canopy of trees.
We will also retain as many as we can. We've had a tree expert look at the plan, and especially around the Central Park, there are trees there that we can keep.
Around Central Park.
As many as we can.
These are existing buildings.
Building that they're going to be built. We are going to be separate from
Watch
those
it very carefully. Every mature
neighborhood.
tree that can be saved will be saved.
Regardless
of how many you do save, there will
one
be
corner
many more
here,
trees
a
planted.
slim
Except your
corner,
Effie's
and the
garden,
rest
she
will
needs
be
the sunshine.
and also nobody will come to the slim corner, the slim
So you said there's going to be more green space. What are the actual percentages? I assume you have those.
So I don't know what it is in percentage, but we'll have about 2 acres of park, just over 2 acres of park. And then everything in the light green there are sort of semi-private spaces that can be used for community gardens. And I think there was a meeting here last week,
Region park,
a circle meeting, talking about seeds and trying to get like a farmer's market going eventually. So there'll be spaces that can be used for that.
And the next question was, I was wondering also about, we have very large units. I'm in a townhouse, it's a large unit. So what it looks to me is quite striking is that we're going to be in much smaller units, those of us in townhouses. Is that true? I don't see any way around that. And what's the square foot comparison?
We haven't, what we've identified, we haven't got to that level of design, that's the next stage. What we've identified is that these are all townhouses, and over the process we've looked at whether they should be back-to-back, stacked townhouses, the whole bit. What we've heard from many of the residents is they want front and backs to their houses, they want standalone houses, so that they may be a bit more narrow, depends, that you haven't decided yet. There may be a bit more height to some of them, but that will all evolve through the period. As well, when you take a look at these blue buildings, you just see there's no surface parking lots on the site. All the parking is underground. So when you build a house, a building like this, the blue buildings are the private buildings, which will be financing the reconstruction of the public buildings. The footprint of this building underground will be big enough so that parking will be underground next to your house. So you may be able to walk from an underground parking lot into your house directly. Not necessarily. Some of the other ones, there'll be on-street parking, but there'll be accommodated parking on site. We won't lose any parking spots through this. And the goal is that when that happens, is that starts to dictate how the land gets built, how the homes get built, and the size and the stuff that happens. But that level of detail is the next set of meetings. Once we get, what we're trying to do is get the footprints and the roads and the green space, as you see it here, approved to council, and then we come back and start having the more detailed design discussions.
And what you'll hear later on in the meeting is that the city will require TC to replace the units like for like. So they will be required, if it's a three-bedroom unit that's being demolished, they will have to replace the three with another three-bedroom unit.
Yeah, but what about the basement?
Some of them will have basements, maybe some of them won't, but those detailed design issues, we have yet to have an architect.
How are you gonna make it equal if you have a basement and I don't, because you
We
come...
had this discussion on Saturday, and the issue is simple. What we're hearing is that you have a need for storage space. Whether that storage space is in a basement or in a different room, we understand that we have to replicate the capacity of these houses, and that's the challenge we have.
to add that space to our use?
Yeah, so it may not be in the basement. I mean, right now, some people have laundry in the basement. It might be laundry in a separate little cubicle off to the side of the kitchen, or maybe on the second floor. We haven't got to that level of design.
Is not will be noisy for us when we eating and the same time the dryer running and the machine?
We have to get, we haven't got, we're having a conversation about the next meeting instead of this meeting. And if we talk
All the house gonna be exhaust, right?
we are going
don't
to
have
sit down
exhaust
with the
in it.
residents and design houses together.
Yeah.
So that's part
We
of the
have no
strategy.
exhaust in our
To
kitchens.
give you detailed answers on that, without an architect in the room, I'm just talking. You're just asking questions and it's not solving the issue. But we understand what the pressures are. Yes,
My understanding, you're talking about a lot of underground parking.
right?
You also know that there's a river that runs under this property? It
Yeah,
comes down from up Kensington, right through?
Russell Creek, I think it used to be called.
Yes.
Yeah, we're aware of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hope somebody's got a boat.
Yes.
Another question for you for the bottom box on your slide, it says market condos, 15,000, 1,540 units. Most of that diagram looks dark gray to me. Does that mean all of our houses are going to be market condos? What about the apartment buildings?
The apartment buildings stay.
Where's the units where like the Toronto Community Housing people are supposed to live? Is it all basically?
They're townhomes on the streets. There's one 12-story apartment here, so the apartment block up here, it gets distributed between two other apartment blocks, one there, one there. The townhomes get reorganized along the streets.
How many people, in effect, are going to be living in our area once it goes market value plus us living here?
There will be an extra 1,500 homes in this entire area.
And that's all market value.
Those are the market value homes that are financing the transition and the rebuilding of the public homes.
And then the apartment buildings, are they market value or no?
No, these apartment buildings here stay as they are, but they get refurbished with revenue generated on the site. So if you're living, for example, right here on Augusta Square, and you live in a unit right now, the kitchen, the bathroom, the windows, those sorts of things will be replaced as part of this process, and you'll be given your living conditions. You're not being left behind in this process. Those areas will also be improved, and again, your tenant model will stay the same. So the problem here is, I mean, look at it. If I was the Prime Minister or if I was the Premier, you wouldn't have to do this. You'd have a housing program that was paid for by the taxes that are paid to Ottawa and Queen's Park, and we could revitalize this neighborhood and build more of the co-op and build a stronger public housing neighborhood here, because that's important housing to have in the downtown core. We don't have a program like that, but we have houses and homes that have reached a point in their existence where the roofs are starting to leak, the electricity is becoming expensive, the windows aren't properly insulated, bathrooms and kitchens need fixing. People have talked about the need for kitchen fans and the whole bit. The only way to rebuild this housing is to work into a partnership like this. And the way it's going to be financed is that the land, a lot of it being parking lot, will be redeveloped for private condominiums, and you'll have new neighbors, and some of you will be moving into those buildings as we have also low-income home ownership opportunities. We have lots of kids in this neighborhood going to university. We need places for them and their families to live. And so the goal is to use these blue buildings to pay for the reconstruction of the entire neighborhood, to pay for the park, to pay for the new streets, and to pay for the new services and the new community center that will be built as a result of this. And the good news is that this entire project, say for a few little contributions here and there, more or less pays for itself. And so we build a stronger neighborhood without having to beg for money from Ottawa and Queen's Park as other neighborhoods are. Yeah.
Are you guys gonna run out of funds? Is it potential you might run out of funds or like to do it, like to do all the stuff?
There is always the potential for things to go wrong with this program, having been analyzed for the last couple of years by people who do the financial analysis, and by TCHC's board and by the staff of Toronto Community Housing. They have looked at this, and it is it's been pushed to the top of the list because it's virtually self-financing, and it's the easiest way to fix the houses in this neighborhood, and it's the best way to fix the houses.
Yes. I have a question. I think at this stage, the architectural plans are done, or they are?
No, that's what I've just been saying. There are no architects hired yet.
Okay.
When they come here, we're going to sit down with the residents and the different members of the families and say, what do you need in a perfect house?
Because last time when these buildings were built, they forget to have exhaust in the kitchens.
Exactly.
So we almost 50% are in asthma in our homes when we are cooking something.
Yeah, no, we've heard those issues, and we need to make sure when we build new houses, they serve the needs of the people living here.
And the second part of my question is the financer, the developers.
Yep.
May you like to disclose their name, and do they have any past record of doing such community?
The name of the company is Tridel. They're an established Toronto family that has a building company in the city. They built projects like Village by the Grange is one of their projects, but they've done other projects in higher buildings and townhomes. They are currently on site doing a redevelopment for Toronto Community Housing up in Don Mills called Tridel.
Oh, Leslie Nymark.
Leslie Donmark? Nymark, sorry.
Leslie
Nymark, Leslie and Shepherd. We have had preliminary conversations with them because they're building other buildings in the ward, and they are prepared to come here and start talking with the residents, and they've asked to be toured through the neighborhood, and that will be set up shortly. But they're a long-standing family, run business in Toronto, and we're lucky to have them. They're very good, strong developers.
Thank you.
So there's another question over here somewhere. No? So.
Okay, I'm just going to plow forward so we can get through to the more important pieces. The architect is coming
in the next few months. We're just starting to look at who, we're making a short list, and then as soon as we have a short list, then we'll start involving the community.
But just so there's no mistake, we need to get this approved first before we move to the next step, and that's where we are.
Essentially, we did that. It has something on this white people right down here. Can you explain it, please?
The demolition?
Yeah.
Okay, we are going to explain that, Alan.
Yeah.
It's coming in the next part of the presentation.
That's what we're trying to get to.
Okay.
Okay. Another project that the city has been working on is the Dundas Streetscape Study. And so it does identify, this study does identify Alex Park, here's Dundas, here's Bathurst, as a special project area where we can, as a city, make Dundas more pedestrian friendly. By making the sidewalks wider, burying the cables, and making a new intersection at Augusta.
Bicycle line?
This is, excuse me, sorry?
Bicycle line will be there built too? Road for bicycle?
Not currently proposed.
Not.
It's a shared bicycle lane.
It's a shared.
And so this is what, that intersection could look like. So we've had consultants draw up this picture for us. So moving on to now the housing related matters. So I just want to very briefly tell you what the role is of the city in the process. So what we will do, the planners, what we will do is that we will secure the requirements that TCHC has to do in policies that are passed by council. So there will be policies that require the replacement. We will enter into legal agreements, the city with TCHC, to ensure that they will do all the good things that you're going to hear about in about 5 to 10 minutes. And we will ensure that there's always a review of the new plans to make sure that, that all the new buildings do get reviewed through the planning division in consultation with the ward councillor. Also, and with the community as well. There will be, this next one, there will be other new meetings as the buildings get approved approved and built, before the buildings get approved and built. So we will notify you again by mail to make sure that you come to the meetings and you're part of that process. And you can always, and in terms of the rental housing policies and securing the replacement of the units, you can contact David Spence, who is our housing policy planner, who's going to discuss very briefly the policies that are affected by this development.
Thanks, Jeff. Good evening, everyone. So my name is David Spence. I'm with the City Planning Policy and Research section. And Jeff, as you know, is a community planner, and he's coordinating all aspects of this redevelopment proposal. My job is focused primarily on the rental housing issues in this case. So we provide input and advice to Jeff's work in dealing with a variety of issues. You've probably all seen the material at the back. There's questions and answers that provide a little more information for you. There's, on the question and answers page, the back of it, you'll see that there's some contact numbers that have further information, how to get in touch with the counselor, get in touch with myself, Jeff, Leslie. So make use of that information. There's web links there as well that provide you with more information on what's going on. I just wanted to say a few words about rental housing, and I think it's okay. I think it's well known that rental housing serves a very important role in the city. It provides almost half of all the housing units that we have, and right now it's a very relatively tight rental housing market. The vacancy rate is fairly low. It's 1.4%, so that means that out of 100 units, only 1.4 unit would be vacant. So in order to have a healthy market, you have to have at least 3% vacancy rate. We've got 1.4, so it's fairly low now. And in this area of Toronto, the vacancy rate is actually 1%. So it's a pretty tight rental market. And there's not a lot of rental housing that's being constructed, with the exception of some of these demolition and redevelopment projects. But there's not a lot of new rental housing. There's new condominiums, but they're not providing affordable rental housing. They're providing high-end units primarily, and those units in the condominiums don't have the same kind of security for tenants that conventional rental housing does. So it's in the city's interest to protect the rental stock, and City Council has taken steps to do that through a number of means, through city's official plan policies, and also through the new City of Toronto Act. I'm just going to say a few words about both of them. So the city's official plan, which I think is, as you all know, is basically the document that provides guidance on the growth and development of the city, and there's a number of policies that specifically deal with rental housing. There's two in particular that relate to this area, this redevelopment that's being proposed. One requires that whenever social housing, including nonprofit cooperative housing, is going to be demolished, it has to be replaced. All of the units have to be replaced according to this policy. So the same number at a similar rent. And another requirement under these policies is that there be an acceptable tenant relocation and assistance package. Basically, tenants have to be taken care of and they have to be relocated into these replacement units. And there's another policy that also sees that where rental properties are being redeveloped, where there's existing buildings that will stay, but the land around it is being redeveloped, we'd like to see that there's improvements made to those existing buildings and that amenities are added for those tenants. So we're always looking to see through these policies that there are going to be some benefits to existing tenants, whether they're going to be moving into the new replacement units or whether they're going to be staying in the existing buildings that are being fixed up. So in addition to the policies in the official plan, there's also part of the new City of Toronto Act that deals with this too. The province gave the city additional authority back in 2007 to regulate changes to rental housing. And so this strengthens the policies and it gives tenants more protection. And that legislation is implemented through a bylaw that Council has passed. One of the requirements of this bylaw is that there be a tenant meeting. There's many requirements set out there, but one is that there be at least one tenant meeting. There's going to be a number of meetings in the future that will cater to tenants, cater to residents of the area. Sometimes you'll hear me say tenant, but I'm referring to the residents in both the Toronto community housing buildings as well as the residents in the Atkinson co-op buildings. So that's the purpose of tonight's meeting, is to inform the residents and to get your feedback and to let you know what the next steps will be. Normally we're dealing with, at the city, we're dealing with redevelopment of private buildings, but there are a few examples of social housing buildings that have been redeveloped in the recent past, and so it's not new to the city. There's Regent Park, Don Mount, and Lawrence Heights is now getting underway, so there is some history being developed there, and each time that we at the city and city planning are working with TCH, refinements are being made, the process is being improved, and I'm sure that many of you are quite familiar with the 10 guiding principles that have been developed. I'm quite sure that many of you have provided input to help develop those 10 guiding principles. And there's a number of them that specifically deal with rental housing. As Councillor Vaughan had mentioned, zero displacement is the primary one here. Nobody has to move from the area. Everyone will stay in the area. And I think that's a fundamental principle that we haven't really seen before. Usually people might be moved outside of the area, but in this particular case, everyone gets to stay in the community. There's other principles dealing with things like good housing and tenant assistance. There's one principle on minimizing tenant disruption, protecting tenant rights, among others. So a lot of work has gone into developing these principles. And there's been a lot of community input, and based on the work that's been done, this redevelopment proposal is in keeping with the general intent of the city's policies. It's in line with what the policies are trying to do. So there are a number of things that we'll have to look at as the project progresses, and the plans are going to be reviewed, and we'll look at things like unit type and sizes and storage and amenity space. But overall, the general direction is in keeping with what we're trying to achieve through the demolition and redevelopment policies. There's a number of ways that the tenant issues are going to be dealt with and secured. There's an agreement called the Section 37 agreement that's usually used in these kinds of circumstances. It's done under the Planning Act, and it's intended to try to secure certain benefits and facilities, and in this case it will also secure various items around the demolition of the existing buildings and their redevelopment. It's also going to provide a broader framework for the tenant relocation and assistance plan. And then TCH is going to develop this implementation plan within this broader framework. And Leslie's going to get into some more of the specific details, what this means for you. But that will set out how tenants are going to be engaged in the process, how information is going to be communicated to tenants, and it'll be describing various phases of development and what's involved in the moving process. There's going to be an agreement as well with the Atkinson Housing Cooperative, and there'll also be what we're calling a resident relocation agreement. So every resident that's going to be affected by this, that's going to have to move into a new replacement unit or revitalization unit will enter into an agreement. And basically what that does is explain what the residents' rights are, and it'll give more information on the timing of the move and what kind of help's going to be offered in terms of the moving process.
So the resident will have a package, agreement packaging thing?
Yes, it's part of the agreement. Everything will be spelled out well in advance to let you know what's available, and there's particular ways that help will be provided. Leslie has a list of those that she'll explain when she runs through her presentation. So there's going to be a lot of upfront notice to tenants well before they have to move. It's going to go beyond what's set out in the Residential Tenancies Act. So, yes?
You're talking about residents who live in the Atkinson Co-op. You're not talking about the residents who live in 20 Canoli or the ones that live in 91 Augusta.
Yeah, I'm talking about the ones where the buildings will be demolished,
right,
and the tenants will be relocated. However, there is another component to this as well that Leslie will also touch on, but where renovations are being done to other buildings.
But they're not, people that live in that place are not going to be
No, no. And just one last slide before I turn things over to Leslie. Toronto Community Housing is also going to be preparing a construction mitigation strategy. That's a typical requirement, and basically it has two objectives: to minimize disruption to the residents caused by any construction activity. So anything to do with safety or noise or dust, or resident access or vehicle access, maintenance of the site, they'll be dealt with in this mitigation strategy. It's just trying to find ways to keep the disturbances to the absolute minimum. And another objective is to inform the tenants about any work that's going to go on. So there'll be a process set in place for telling tenants about construction work, and then this information will identify start and completion dates for any phase of construction and provide contact person numbers for you to get in touch with if there's any complaints or if you want any additional information about what's taking place. Yes?
Do you know who's doing the construction, who has the contract, the bid for it?
No, that hasn't happened yet.
No? Okay.
Well, it's Tridel. Tridel will be looking after phase 1 right now, and then they will tender out contracts to different trades.
Do you know how much the bid was?
There are no bids yet because
No?
we don't know exactly what we're building.
Do you know if they're providing any opportunities for jobs and stuff?
And I'll talk a bit about that.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a question. What is the future of this co-op? Who will be the controlling body after this construction? Is co-op will be evaporated, or what is?
The co-op will be as big as it was when it started. We'll have the same rights and responsibilities. Will be covered by the same people that currently govern it now. So there's no change to the co-op anticipated or proposed as part of the revitalization.
Okay, thank you.
Question I want to ask.
Sure.
During the process of renovation, what so far is have been said that most people have remain in the community. What sort of the people who are allergic to, let's say, business cards or different things, like, would they be getting a place outside of the area or?
Yes, that's a possibility, and I'll talk a bit about that after, but people can move off-site if they so choose, if they are allergic to dust, or they work night shift and they sleep during the day, or any reasons why they might want to be off-site during construction.
Typically, some of the temporary accommodation is outside of the area to be redeveloped. That's not the case here. The objective is to ensure that anyone that wants to stay will have the ability. But where someone has special needs or health ailments that may be affected as a result of the redevelopment, special arrangements could be made. Yes, sir?
It will be the same pattern, will be like Regent Park, or just having the different, because according to size, very small bedroom like that there in the Regent Park. So it will be having the same way, or you are having the different, because it is look like kitchen hole. Then if you will go, just you will find that so small rooms are there. So it is not good for the families.
One of the aims of the policies is to try to ensure that the replacement units are of a similar size to the existing units. They are usually a bit smaller, but we are trying to see that they're as close as possible to the units that now exist. A lot of that has yet to be worked out, as Councillor Vaughan had mentioned, and there will be forums for...
Just to be clear about this, we haven't yet started to design the spaces, and so to predict their size now would be be unfair. What we've said is that after we get this meeting done, which is a requirement to get to the next step, before we put pen to paper, the architects that are selected to be on site will be sitting down and meeting with the residents to hear what they like about their current houses, what they dislike about their current houses, and try as hard as we can to make sure that the new houses reflect the changes that the bulk of the community wants. For some people, the kitchen's too big. For some people, the kitchen's too small. For some people, the bathroom should be on the top floor. For some, it should be on the bottom floor. Not one size fits all families. Not all families fit one size. But we're going to be talking to residents to make sure that the new properties reflect the needs and the aspirations of the community. And that process starts after this meeting. So, all the questions about basements, where the laundry goes, where the bathroom goes, what side of the house the kitchen's on, all those issues are to be dealt with downstream when we get an architect hired and we move past this planning stage. So I think
once they are going to have the planning at the time, that they are going to set up the size. So just according to the...
we're not at that stage yet, and while I appreciate the concern, and we all have heard that concern, we have made a commitment, and TCHC has honored that commitment, that before the units are designed, we'll be bringing the architects in here to talk with the families about what they need out of these townhomes or apartments or living arrangements. So we'll canvass your needs, talk to you about it, and before we design them and build them, we'll make sure that we get them right. And the other thing about this is that this is a 15-year project. If the first phase of houses, for whatever reason, teach us lessons about how to change the second and third and fourth phases, we can adjust the building program as we move along. We're not building the whole community all at once, take it or leave it. We can think about it as we go, and we can make accommodations based on the experience we have living in the newer houses.
Can you give us an idea when exactly demolition might start?
Probably in the new year. We have to get through the planning process first, so that's a few months from now, and then while we're going through the planning process, we'll start looking at architects to see which architects would be good at working in this community. So we can do some things at the same time. So probably early next year, we'll start looking at demolition.
6 to 8 months from now, but building actually will start before demolition.
Okay.
So you'll see new houses start to arrive before demolition begins, because a lot of we have to build units to move people to do the demolition. So the parking lots will likely become part of the first parts of the community, particularly in the south end, that become
Does that include the 170 Benali?
Yeah, I'm going to show you a phasing plan so you can see roughly what it's going to look like.
Okay, thank you.
The apartment on Benali stays.
170?
170 doesn't, sorry, 170 doesn't.
170 don't.
You get the numbers mixed up.
So maybe at this point, we'll hand things over to Leslie Gadd from Community Housing Corporation to talk about the specific implementation plan and how that's unfolding.
I have one question. I'm not sure who goes to, but anybody can answer, they will. Like this development, it takes 15 to 10 years, but the last demolition that when happen is going to be last for the housing. So at that time, it requires a lot of maintenance, and so what we can deal with those maintenance, like rip up the shower, The office don't do it because they think that's gonna get tear down, but we are really needed to tear down now those ones that's needed.
Yeah. No, our commitment is that repairs will still continue right throughout that time, but if anything is, if it's cosmetic, it's not likely to happen, but if it's a repair, it will happen. If it has to do with health or safety, definitely.
Like I say, our office thinking, this is gonna tear down, so they don't want, you might need to change the whole tile. They say no silicone them, it's not gonna like.
I'll give you an example. We know that this community center, which has got a new floor and has been repainted and the ceiling was fixed.
Yes.
The need, even though we know that this community center is going to be moved to another part of the neighborhood and made much bigger and better, we still fix this community center.
That's how I expect to.
And we will do the same with your homes. If your stove, stops working, we're not going to wait 15 years to fix it.
So if our office just say no, we don't do it, so what are we gonna knock the door to say, all right, come over?
Board of Directors. But in Board 20, what you have is a councillor who is extraordinarily committed to repairing all public housing in the ward. And we've been working very hard above and beyond what TCHC provides as a base level of support, is that we've found ways through the other projects that are happening across the board to make resources available to residents in TCHC neighborhoods. So for example, about 2 years ago when your tractor broke down that collects the garbage and shovels the snow, we stepped up because TCHC didn't have that money and made sure that Alex Park's residents' needs were being met. So even if TCHC can't figure a way out to fix stuff, we still work very hard at the ward office to make sure this neighborhood gets the resources it needs to thrive and be a good place to live.
So that's the only place to complain. They're gonna go to the board member.
Go to the board first.
Well, you have, the townhouses all are operated and managed by the co-op. So Dominique is here, Diane,
Go to the board
Jeannie,
first.
There's several board members here. Yep.
Go to the board first. If you don't get satisfaction on the board, you go to TCHC. If you can't get satisfaction at TCHC, you call me.
Thanks.
Okay, so my name's Leslie Gash.
Excuse me, can we get some of the board members to stand up so some of the other people may know who they are?
Yeah, just come in front. Come in the front, please.
I'm Dominique, so I'm the president of the co-op. I'm Jeannie.
Yeah.
Mara's here, I think, as well too. She's the vice president, but I think she's.
So who is the president?
How long have you been the president?
This is a year and a half. But if you guys have any questions after, please feel free to come to us. And again, they have a lot of questions that are being asked. They're going to be addressing later on in the presentation. So maybe if you just hold up on questions until the end, they can address them.
Okay, so my name's Leslie Gash. I work at Toronto Community Housing in the Development Division. And I'm the project manager working on the Alexandra Park revitalization. So we've been working on this for several years now. There's lots of familiar faces here, but I also see a few new faces too. So I'm glad that you're here, and I hope you'll continue to come to the meetings. So I'm going to be talking about housing relocation and assistance. So first thing I'm going to talk about is there will be relocation documents and plans and David already alluded to some of those. And there's a lot of documents that essentially say the same thing. It's just who signs them. So they all talk about TCHC's rights and responsibilities during the revitalization, what the residents' rights are, but some of them are between us and the city, some are between us and the co-op, and some are between the co-op and the residents. But what they all say is TCHC must perform their duties in this revitalization. So it guides the relocation policy, which is under development at Toronto Community Housing. It's a guide for the relocation for all the TCHC communities that are being revitalized, but also in cases where maybe a house is sold or where repairs are being made and people have to move out. So it governs all relocations. But we will use that policy to guide this relocation here too, but we will also be, because there's a co-op here, we'll have that layer of the co-op over things as well. So it won't necessarily just be something that we've determined. The co-op will look at it as well and say, I think this works really well for us, but this doesn't work, so we need to adjust this. It also lists your rights and obligations, and it confirms our commitment and our obligations throughout this process. Then we also have the Alexandra Park Atkinson tenant agreement, and this is signed by the residents and the co-op at the time of move-in. So when you are being offered up units, your transitional units, meaning your house is being demolished first, for instance, and you're being offered a unit to live in until the new units are built, because we can't build as many new units ahead of time as we like, and I'll go over the phasing in a second. But we actually start with holding vacancies. So we've now asked the co-op, the property manager there and the board, to hold vacancies for us. We have 6 right now, and over time we'll have more vacancies. So some people will have to move into a vacant unit, whereas other people, depending on when their unit is demolished, they may be able to move into a new unit.
How about if it's like you have a family of 4 or 5 and then they split up? Like what happens with that? Like say they want to go live somewhere else and then you only have like 3 people. They're going to move you into like a 3-bedroom or like what?
During the revitalization process, if families change, and they do change, then people will be right sized. So if kids become adults and move away from home, and the family used to have a 5-bedroom unit, but now it's just the parents, maybe and the grandmother and a younger child, then they would qualify for a 3-bedroom unit. So, and related to what you said, we can't split households. So if a couple have been living together and they're separating, we can't give 2 units when they only had 1 before.
Okay. So the adult that they grow up, so they're not gonna live out of the area, so they be able to rent the unit for themselves from co-op?
1 unit will be able to, anybody who lives here now and
Overcrowded.
overcrowded, people will be right sized that way as well. So if there are too many people,
In the same area?
yes, in the same unit.
In
so
the
that
same
there's-
area?
Yeah. in the
They
same-
gonna change from the unit because it's over crowd?
Yes.
So the adults gonna live to another house in the area or a unit?
Okay, well, perhaps. but
And
they
the
will
other
be
one
able
will
to
be
qualify.
still fine in the 5 unit, in the 5 bedroom? Like the 5 bedroom is overload,
Yes,
so the adults gonna move out.
yes.
And still, you will be requirable for that family to live there in a 5
Yes, they can
bedroom.
still- as long as there's
So he's
enough
gonna
people
apply
living in
here
it,
for
they can have
the
5
another unit
Yes.
in the same area, so that means it's not gonna move out of the area.
But if there's
if he
somebody
wants.
in a 3-bedroom and they really qualify for a 5, people will be right sized into the appropriate size unit.
Is it the leaseholder, or is it, how does it go by? The leaseholder, and say if it's the one leaseholder,
Yeah.
there's 2, occupants that are of
Because
both
we don't
age.
split households, they will still have 1 unit.
Okay,
So it'll be
okay.
the same
Oh.
leaseholders on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Uh-huh.
So currently, do you live in a house, like, say a house, so would you be relocated to a house, or would you relocate to a building?
Okay, if you live in a 4 or 5-bedroom house, you will go to a 4 or 5-bedroom house. If you're in a 3-bedroom house, you might go to a 3-bedroom apartment or a 3-bedroom house. But what we're hoping is because things change over time and people move out of the community, that we're hoping that everybody's in a 3-bedroom house will be able to move into a 3-bedroom house, or they'll move into an apartment that they want to be in. Like, when we first started talking about this, somebody came up to me after and said, you know, my kids are getting older, I don't really want to do the stairs anymore, I would actually prefer to be in an apartment. So,
If you think about it, it's a 15-year process. So if you're 16 years old now, you might be 31 when you have to move. Chances are you're not going to be living at home at 31. So
well, you never know.
you never know. I have a 14-year-old. I have a 14-year-old. I hope she's listening. If she can hear. But the neighborhood is going to change with or without the neighborhood being rebuilt. What we're saying is that we're going to accommodate that change as best we can as your families change, and families grow and they shrink over 15 years. We know that.
That's very nice. Before we move on, you said they started the whole unit.
Yes.
Will those units be get by
Yeah, and I'll come to that as well. Okay, so, and then the last agreement, actually, the tenant relocation assistance plan, David has already described. So that's something that is signed between the city and TCHC to make sure that we uphold our obligations. So we're going to talk about now our relocation commitments. So who's eligible? Talk a little bit about community engagement and social development, unit selection in the moving process, your moving supports, and the expectations of residents. So who's eligible? So anybody living in the community at the start of relocation, so when people start to move, those people are eligible. So if you're living here now and you move away and you want to come back to get a new unit, that's not going to happen because we won't have an agreement with you. You will have become a non-member of the co-op, and so you don't have any rights and responsibilities. But if you're living in the co-op and the moving is starting, that's when your relocation agreement is signed and means you have a right to a new unit after the revitalization. So there's going to be a cutoff date.
When is that date, do you know, by any chance?
Sorry?
You know when that date is, the signing
No,
date?
not yet. No. Sometime next year, we'll start with the first one, so, yeah. So the relocation commitments apply as long as the resident has signed this agreement, and the agreement is likely between, we haven't worked all this out legally, but it's likely going to be between Atkinson Co-op and the member. Because we have an operating agreement and a lease with the co-op. We don't have one on an individual basis with the people living here. So you also have to be a resident in good standing. So ideally that means you don't have any arrears, but if you do have arrears,
what does that mean?
Means you're behind in your rent.
Okay.
So, but if you're behind in your rent and you have an agreement with the co-op and you're living by that agreement, which might mean you have to pay your housing charge and another, say, $50 a month until you catch up, as long as you're upholding that agreement, you're a member in good standing.
I went to the house and asked for their bylaws to check out something, and they wouldn't give it to me.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on with that.
Just talk to me about it after.
Okay. And so if you're not a member in good standing, when the relocation starts to take place, we can help you with that. So the co-op can help you, or TCHC can help you, but we want you to get on track with your payments so that you are entitled to a new unit. And that you need to continue to be a resident or a member of Atkinson Co-op. Or a tenant, because there are some tenants with Atkinson Co-op.
Residents are going to court, for paying.
Non-payment?
Yes.
Okay, so then that would be considered a member not in good standing. So that's why people who find that they're having trouble with their housing charges should approach the co-op property manager, Don White, ahead of time. Once you know it's coming up, or even now, start thinking about that so that you can be a member in good standing.
And where does this thing come from? This principle, member of good standing. Where does this come from?
That's a good question.
Well, it comes from the basic understanding that if you've got a lease and you want that lease to be honored by the landlord, in this case the co-op, you have to honor the terms of the lease. So you can't expect the landlord to live up to the landlord's obligations if the tenant's not living up to the tenant's obligations. So if you got a deal's a deal. If you've agreed to pay a certain form of rent, and
that's what I was saying. I asked for the papers. You know, so I didn't know about the board members, but I just talked to that guy. He said Don White. He told me I could photocopy or something.
It depends on whether, I don't know which unit you live in, and I don't know whether you're...
No, it's just because they said they're going to credit it. They don't give you money back.
Okay. Maybe for individual
yeah, we can, if you talk
cases,
to me,
we can talk after.
Okay.
Talk about the,
So when you pay those people to a different, because they're not in good standard to pay the rent.
Yeah, well, probably what will happen is they'll end up going to the tenant board, and if people are not paying their housing charges, then actually it's the co-op that deals with
also
that.
So when redevelopment,
if they want to get a arrears agreement and start working on it, that's fine. And if they don't, then they could end up with no unit at the end because they won't.
It's no different if you're a tenant now and you're not in good standing. If you're not paying your rent, you're going to find yourself in trouble with the co-op because you're not paying your rent.
But in case of that,
and if you don't pay your rent, it's hard for us to know whether or not you intend on staying in the unit or not staying in the unit.
they should.
What the message is tonight is make sure that qualify for all the benefits that are being offered for relocation during this process. Make sure you sustain your tenant status in good standing with the co-op board. It becomes more critically important now than in previous times because contractually we can't offer benefits to people that aren't paying rent. And if you think about it, why should you subsidize with your rent all of this moving and all of this change if people are sitting by and not paying rent?
But they have a must have some kind of that. 10,000, 5,000, but no.
Okay, so community engagement and social development. So we've been working in the community now for must be about 4 years, and the last 2.5 has been much more intensive. So we'll continue to involve people. We attend the Atkinson board meetings every month. We go to visioning committee meetings. We're going to be probably attending APRA meetings as well, the Alexandra Park Residents Association. And by having bigger meetings like this on different issues, and then as we move into the design, you'll see that there's opportunities there for lots of participation. And as we work through our housing agreement too. So we'll be working with the co-op and we'll be working with the general communities. So we'll have many forms of communication information. Probably many of you have participated in the number of surveys that have happened in the last few years. We've got a newsletter that I guess we didn't bring with us, but will probably be handed out this weekend. And, oh, there's actually newsletters at the back there. And we'll find other ways of communicating with people. If people want to communicate by email, we'll take email addresses and try to find ways to get people as involved as possible. Continue to be involved. We also have interpretation and translation services, so we try to translate into the different languages for meeting notices. And we have interpreters at this meeting, and certainly for our big meetings, we tend to have between 6 and 8 interpreters at each meeting. During the relocation itself, we'll have an office on site somewhere so that people who have issues with their relocation, there's somebody right on site that can deal with the issues right away. And that we'll continue to link with the community and any services in the community, such as the community center and others, to support your needs, and particularly during moving, which we know can be a very stressful time as I think you mentioned it earlier about community economic development and whether we can get jobs out of this. In our Region Park revitalization, there have been 465 jobs through the efforts of the development partner there, Toronto Community Housing, Toronto Employment and Social Services at the City of Toronto, and with the businesses that have gone into that community. So people have gotten jobs in construction, with our consultants, with the Royal Bank, with Tim Hortons, Freshco, Rogers, and we'll do the same thing in Alexandra Park as well. So we're already, Toronto Employment Services has been coming to visioning committee meetings for quite some time now. We're in the process of getting a survey together so that they can do a skills analysis of what people in the community, what skills you have, but also the things that you want to do as well. So, and then as jobs come up, we'll try to match jobs with people. And we have Tridel, who's the development partner for Phase 1, has committed to providing jobs in construction. We've had our planning consultants provide some jobs, our transportation consultant, and as we hire architects and things, we'll also make sure that part of their contract is providing jobs and training opportunities as well.
Have they applied any of that? Have they actually did any outtakes, like any out?
Not yet, no. But all that will be coming in the next few months.
Okay, in the next meeting?
Yeah, pretty soon actually.
Oh, okay. So it's the same process to the social assistants, you're saying they're doing it through them?
Yeah, they right now you probably have to go to Metro Hall, but we're talking with Toronto Employment and Social Services about maybe having an office on site here.
Oh, okay, that's even better.
Lisa, I have a question.
But we will also work with Tridel to see if there's we can create a program that will help people in Region Park. Do you know how many people have? None right now?
9.
Oh, 9. So 9 people in Region Park so far have been able to purchase their own homes, and we know that there's a lot of interest in this community around that. So we will do whatever we can to try to make that happen.
One of the commitments we made when we started this was to give people an option to change their lives as we change the neighborhood. And there are different ways of doing this. There are programs of low-income home ownership where we have we've been talking from TCHC about how we might be able to secure some of the units in the private housing and turn them into 2 different types of housing models. One is added to the co-op. In other words, if your councillor can find new dollars in the neighborhood with some of the changes coming to the community, what we do is we try and claw back some of that money. What we'll do is we'll try and purchase units that are coming onto the market and add them to the co-op, so that the co-op actually is renting out at market rates to new people in the neighborhood or people that want to pay market rent and live in a different building. But we will add and grow the size of the co-op and also help refinance the co-ops to help cover some of the costs around repairs going forward and what have you. So that's one option, is to add new market rent units to the co-op to build and strengthen the co-op. And that's one option. The second option is to look at a way, and there are programs with private developers and with private finance companies that look to help with the idea of low-income home ownership, which has allowed tenants to transition into home ownership. The biggest problem is quite often finding the second mortgage. And so we're going to be looking to work with mortgage lenders and also with a number of people who are Muslim in the community, take a look at Sharia lending laws and Sharia lending practices so that you can become an owner without mortgage, which is a challenge for some people with particular faith requirements around mortgages. But the hope here is that we evolve a program that can transition people from being tenants into being owners without having to live in the community and without shrinking or diminishing the capacity of the co-op to continue to house tenants. But those programs will emerge over 15 years, and we have work to do from my office to find the resources to build the programs to give people the options either to be tenants, homeowners, co-op members, or else just market renters. And all of those programs will be made available to the residents of this community who live here now first before outsiders are given opportunities.
Good.
But home ownership is a goal. We understand how it helps families deal with a whole series of other issues.
Thank you. That's a good hope.
Okay, so talked about jobs here and also requiring our development partners to make commitments. So we'll do that, and it could be job shadowing, it could be training, it could be, there's a program called Hammerheads.
I've seen that one, yeah. For apprenticeships.
For apprenticeships,
In our apprenticeship programs, there are two programs. One is one by the trades, the building trades, and they'll be on, and we've already started to engage private developers to start getting young people in this neighborhood an opportunity when new construction projects come through the ward. So we have a number of projects that are coming through the ward. We're now telling those developers they need to get in touch with Hammerheads on a couple of the sites, and we're going to start trying to get folks from Alex Park who have enrolled in those programs, so when the construction starts here, people are already trained, so you're not getting entry-level jobs, you're getting good paying jobs. Tridel has its own program, which is a great stepping stone to Hammerheads, and we've already started conversations with them, with TCHC, and also with my office through Tridel comes through other projects, about making sure that there's spaces available for young people in Alex Park. We'll be coming back to this neighborhood with those programs. We want to hit the ground running here. It's not good enough simply to have apprenticeship programs. We want you to get apprentices now, so that when the good construction jobs arrive, you're capable of working in your neighborhood, and the jobs will be set aside for people at all levels of the construction trades, not just the entry level.
And we need to reinforce the message that jobs in the trades pay well, and young people should be encouraged to look at the trades as a viable option, because a lot of people just dismiss it, and it's going to be a huge need for skilled workers in the next little while, and people should take advantage of these programs. Okay, so the moving process. So there's two main steps. And we're calling them different kinds of units here. So there's moving to a relocation unit, and that could be a transitional unit. So there might be a vacant unit, a 4-bedroom up on the north end of the site, and you live in one of the first units that are being developed in the south end of the site. So you might have to move into that unit first. So that's what is called a relocation unit. So that's an existing unit. And then there's moving to a revitalization unit. So that's when you're moving either from the unit you live in now to a new unit, or your transitional unit into that new unit. And so hopefully, I mean, ideally people would only have to move once, but some people might have to move twice. And, you know, there could be the odd person that might have to move more than that, depending on the size of the units that are being built and what's available. So here's the phase. So this is phase 1 here, and it's everything south of Carr Street here. So this is the Randy Padmore Park over here. This is Cameron. This is Augusta down here, and this is Benally here. So everything south of Carr, if you can imagine the park going all the way through. In that phase, and then these units up here, which are just south. Here's the community center where we are now, so it's just south here. So these units and these units are going to be built first. And then later on will come the market units here. So the next slide, it's not easy to see on this, but this is the first phase here. So we're building, I believe it's 11 units here. And to do that, we have to demolish the 5 units that exist here. Then the second piece, this is all phase 1, but 1A, but this is where we're building new units on some vacant land, so we can build ahead. So we have to get vacancies, demolish units, build units, have more vacancies. Like, it just keeps going through phase 1 like that, where we always, I think with the exception of one sub-phase, we always need a certain number of vacant units.
Is that the only street here in one street?
Yeah, phase 1. Benoli Street here is what exists now. It doesn't come up until till the third part of the first.
Yeah, that's where you're doing phase 1?
Yes. Yeah. So right across here.
In the parking lot?
Yes. Well, this parking lot up here, but down here, yes, that's right, in the parking lot, and then just a little bit to the north.
Right up there.
Right up to 20 Benoli. Yep.
It started from Queen Street.
So then,
Small business.
this is part of the 1B, so this market building here, and some more townhouses here, and this is when we complete Carr Street. So Benoli now runs all the way up to Carr, and Carr comes across here. A lot of the phasing was determined. It was a very difficult process to figure out the phasing, because we have to make sure that we have units for people that are appropriate to the size of the units that they need. And the other part of the issue that made this complicated is it's not good to just build a half a street and then leave it there for 10 years. Because essentially what you're doing is, it's called a throwaway cost. So you're just throwing away that money. Because by the time you complete that street there, you're going to have to redo it anyway. So you can't have half pipes here and not there. So we needed to try to keep this as much a part of the phasing as possible. And also things like managing stormwater, which we don't show here. But over here, we need to, when the rain comes down and runs off, right now there's no stormwater management and everything just runs into the sewers. But because it's mostly low rise with lots of townhouses, you don't have to worry about lots of water. So it just drains into the ground. But as you start having buildings here, all of a sudden you need stormwater management. So there's often tanks in the bases of buildings, and we'll have green roofs and things to help with that as well.
Let's see. You said the way how this is run, some of these streets will be changed, right?
Yeah.
For example, in Delhi, right?
Yep. So I'll show you. So Benoli will go from, it won't just go to the top of 20 Benoli, it'll go all the way up to where Randy Cadwell Park is, and there'll be a street that goes across here. And this street is not going to be a very busy street. We'll probably put something called traffic tables, where you kind of raise the surface of the street a little bit. It helps to slow down traffic. And maybe we'll use like interlocking brick there or something to show people that this is not the kind of street that you cut through. This is a street where kids might be crossing and playing. And so we want to make sure that the traffic on this street and this one is fairly, is minor traffic. But it will help people who want to get deliveries to their doors, or or garbage and those sorts of things. So you don't have to put that huge collection of bins there on garbage day. Oh, okay. Okay, so Carr Street is going to run between Augusta and Cameron, and it's right across from the Randy Cadmore Park. And then Benoli Street, which runs right up in front of 20 Benoli, will join that street there. And then later on, Augusta will be extended right up through the site to Dundas Street. So the traffic won't have to do that jog here and go right by the school, which is actually an issue for Ryerson School here. And all that traffic goes by there and makes drop off and pick up in the morning, both on foot and by car, more challenging. And then Grange will go right from Denison to Augusta where it is now, and it'll continue right through to Grange over here, which links up with Spadina.
I'm just wondering, what is that time frame to complete that phase?
Phase 1?
3 years, 5 years?
Probably a little bit more than that. We're sort of guessing around 7 years for phase 1.
7 years?
Yeah. Yeah. So in phase 1 is the replacement of 76 units of rental housing and the construction of about 492 market units. And then the rest is actually coming. We used to talk about it, this is in 3 phases, but it looks like it's going to be a 2-phase project. So 1C is the last bit there with the market building and some market townhouses and the rest of the replacement units there. 2A, I'm just going to go through this quickly because the second phase is, far off in the future, but the most important part of the second phase here is this. And this is where the community center is coming in. Oh, okay, sorry. So I'm looking at phase 2 right now. So the community center is going to be Cameron and Carr Street. And there's a 10-story building. 10-story building of rental, and that's the Atkinson co-op rental. And that's the building we're going to start to need to house the people who were in 170 Vinoli, because eventually that building is going to come down and we need to build ahead because we don't have 1 and 2 bedrooms on site, so we need to build 1 and 2 bedrooms to accommodate that. And then some of the 3-bedroom family units will be here too, because it's a great location in that it's it's accessible to the central park in the middle of the site, and the basketball courts will be here as well, sort of surrounded by the community center. And the community center, we end up having about probably almost twice as much space as what you have now. It'll be on the ground floor of that building. So it'll be nice and bright, and it'll be purpose-built. So what you want there, you have the opportunity to plan for. So it won't be trying to make use of the rooms you have. It'll be, how do we want this room to be? And it can be designed.
Do you have an idea how many floors these condos are going to be?
The ones on the south end of the site are 10 to 12 stories. And then on the north part of the site, everything that you see right on the street, I don't know whether when you walk around town these days, you don't see tall buildings that come right to the sidewalk. They have what they call a podium. So you might have only 4 or 5 stories right at the street, and then it steps back so you can't really see it. So it helps in that it doesn't feel like the towers are coming down on you, but it also helps in terms of shading and not casting shadows on things. So around the park in particular, in the center of the site, we've got the 2 existing buildings here, but we just wanted to make sure that there were no tall buildings shading the park so that there would be sunny play areas for kids. And that the heights on Dundas Street here, we have, the tallest one is 17 stories, but it's set back and it doesn't shade any of the townhouses. And we have to make sure that we don't shade on the opposite side of the street as well on Dundas. So those tall towers are set back from the streets.
So the townhouses that is on 170 stays, right?
Townhouses at 170 Vinoli?
Yeah. And Dundas.
All townhouses will be demolished, with the exception of the ones that are attached to the 20 Vinoli site. 21, 21A, 23, and 23A, there's like a 4-plex there. Those will stay because they were built in the 80s, not in the 1960s like the rest of the housing. So it's in better condition, but those will also be refurbished as well. So this is 2E. It's a big chunk of the land, sort of around Grange Street. It finishes off the park as well, and it's mostly replacement townhouses with one market building that will be exactly where we are today. Phase 2C are the two northeast and northwest squares at the top, one at between Denison and Augusta, and this is when Augusta goes right up to Dundas, and the other one is here, it's closer to Spadina and Willison over here. And those will be two market buildings, as well as another Atkinson co-op building here, and that is 11 stories, yes, and some townhouses as well. And the final phase is, the last piece is the middle square here between Dundas and Grange, and between Augusta and the North Park here. And that North Park, as the council mentioned earlier, this is where retail could spill over from Dundas. What would be really nice, and what we heard from the group that's working on the village circle, is that there's potentially room here for a farmer's market on the weekends. People can come from other parts of the community. You can get people coming down from Kensington Market and hopefully shopping here, buying seeds, buying spices and recipes and things, and bringing people into Alexandra Park and making money from it as well. So, unit selection process. So, this is the first part. This is when you might be moving to a temporary unit. So, you will have a choice on where you can move, but it won't be a big choice. Because we're going to try to have as many vacancies as possible before the process begins, but a lot of that is related to who's moving out. So when we first started this process, we were getting 9 to 13 vacancies a year. Now it's down to about 3 or 4. So I'm assuming that means that people don't want to leave here because they think that something good is happening here and they want to stay and take advantage of it. So relocation residents will receive priority access. So that means if somebody wants to transfer just because the unit doesn't, well, I don't know what the transfer policies are in the co-op, but say you're in a 2-bedroom and you qualify for a 3, and a 3-bedroom comes up, somebody who needs to be relocated because of demolition, they have priority over the other person who moves just because the unit's not appropriate for them. And their choice of the unit is based on what's available at the time. So you may want to move into the northeast part of the site because you have friends there, but if there's a vacant unit in the northwest part of the site, you're not going to be able to move into the northeast just because you want to. You have to go where the vacancies are. And you'll be able to identify your needs and preferences in advance.
What about if you want to transfer to like a different area?
Different area of the city?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's possible.
Is there like those vouchers or something like you get like a,
You can go through, we checked first I thought that wasn't possible, but we checked the agreement that the co-op and TCHC have, and it enables people to transfer off-site if they want. So if you don't want, somebody mentioned allergies or something, you mentioned, if people are allergic to dust and it's going to be hard for them, you can get a priority transfer from TCHC to move somewhere else in the city. And then at that time, you have the right to come back, but if you like where you are, then maybe you'll want to waive your right to come back.
Does it take like 5 years, 7 to 10 years?
Because we need, before we can start construction, we need people to get out of those units, right? So there'll be a priority transfer. Okay, so this is the TCHC standard process for choosing a relocation unit. And again, we'll talk to the co-op about this so that we make sure that it works for the co-op and not just for us. So first we do outreach and information, and it's well in advance of the official notice. So people will get an official notice at least 5 months before they have to move. And it's going to give people a moving date because they have to be gone on that date in order for us to meet our requirements with our development partner as well. So people will attend an information session, and a random selection process will give each household a number. And through 2 revitalizations at Toronto Community Housing now at Regent Park and Don Court, what seems to work best for people is that people get a random number. It's not by what date you moved into the co-op, it's by a random selection. And our relocation staff swear that that has worked best for them. But again, we'll talk to the co-op about that. So you
Like
just-
lottery.
you're-
It's like lottery.
It's a lottery, yeah. We don't call it a lottery, but yeah, it's a lottery. Yeah. So you're going to attend an information session.
One of the issues we've heard is that people in the south end want to sort of stay in the south end, people in the north end, that there are relationships between households that are important. What the random number does is that while you don't get necessarily a guarantee that you'll stay in the south end or the north end, people tend to sort of reflect the priorities that they have. And so if you've been living around a certain area, the conversations that happen around relocation is, I think I'd like to live in the south area. Even if you're 6th on the list, or 1st on the list, or 10th on the list, it sort of self-sorts itself out. People kind of migrate to the areas and have a conversation amongst themselves. So even though you may be down in the ranking, people, not everyone wants the same units in the same part of the neighborhood. And so when Leslie says it works itself out, the experience has been in these areas that the patterns that people have established and the neighbors that they like to live next to, it kind of works itself out regardless of what number you get. So it's not something to stress out. And even if we did give you sort of, try to figure out some sort of system like first to last, or the large families go first or what have you, the housing types that you get to choose from will also guide you to where you want to live. So it's the random sense of the number is not as big an issue as you might think it is.
So then you're going to attend an information session. You'll meet with relocation staff to review all the units that match your household qualifications. So you're obviously not going to have a choice of a whole bunch of stuff. You'll only, if you're in a 5-bedroom unit and you still qualify for 5-bedroom, you'll have a choice of the 5 bedrooms. So that's part of what the councillor was saying about how it sort of works itself out. And you meet on an individual basis. It's not going to be in a meeting like this where you're talking about your needs. You're meeting with relocation staff, with your household, and that's it. Everything's private, and you get to talk about what your needs are. Then you will rank the units that you like on a preference form, and then the relocation staff will match that all up. So if 2 households have the same preferences, that's when your random draw number will come in. And then you'll be sent a letter to be offered a unit.
So how if you don't like that one? You get an extra draw, like what happens? Like something. Say if how if you don't like the unit or something? Can you
But
go on
you've
like
already said what you would like.
Oh, you already put the checklist.
In the relocation, when you're moving to your transitional unit, you're not going to have a lot of choices. But when it comes down to picking a new unit, you'll have more choice. So after you've chosen the unit, you can either accept the offer and you sign a lease or an occupancy agreement, I guess they call it. You sign a relocation agreement and you get ready to move. Or you can decline the offer and seek an alternative from other available units. But everybody has got to move out by the deadline on their notice in order for us to be able to start to build. Okay. So this is when you're moving to a new unit, and it's similar. So you receive outreach and information well before the official notice. Then you get an official notice to initiate the return process. So you attend an information session or sessions, and then that random process will give you a number again. You're going to meet with the relocation staff to look at all the units that meet your requirements. Then you're going to rank your units again on your preferred form, your preference form, and then they're going to match up the units again. So it's basically the same process as for the relocation unit, only this is for your revitalization unit. This is your new one. And then we're going to we or Atkinson will send you a letter offering you a unit. And again, you can accept the offer, sign a lease for the new unit, get ready to move. You can decline the offer, stay in your relocation unit, which is your transitional unit, which will be an old unit, and you can terminate. Actually, this one qualifies more if you've moved off-site. So if you decided you want to move to a building outside of Alexandra Park, and you like it there, you can say, I'm not going to return, and you sign something saying that. Because maybe you like that neighborhood better, or you're closer to your family, or whatever. Or you can defer to a later time. So you still have your right to return, and you'll be offered a unit, but only after all the other relocation. Anybody holding a number after you has gone. Okay, so unit selection process and the phasing. The first households to move will be the first to be offered a new unit as construction is completed. So if there's no unit available that matches your needs, when that first round of construction is complete, you'll have priority in the selection process for the next round of units. And then if there's a unit available that matches your household qualification and you say you don't want to return right then, you will not have the option to return to a unit until the other people after you have chosen their units. So these are the supports that are offered. So during moving. So TCHC pays for these things. Moving services. So we have a moving company that will move your belongings for you. We pay for insurance for major furniture items. We pay for packing materials like boxes and tapes. If there's no adult in the household that is able to do their packing and unpacking, we will provide that as well. There'll be pest control to make sure that pests aren't taken from one unit to another. We're going to reimburse costs to disconnect or connect your services. So when you leave your, if you've got Rogers or Bell or whatever, we'll pay for them to disconnect and we'll pay to have it reconnected in your new unit. We pay for 6 months of mail forwarding, because you know Canada Post charges for that. And we will pay up to $50 for changing your address for any other service, or any other official documents like your vehicle registration, driver's license, or whatever. So we'll pay up to $50 for that. And households with special needs may be eligible for more assistance than that. And we'll review those on a case-by-case basis.
I would like to ask a question. What about the people that have a garden? Who is going to dig up their flowers?
I believe the council is digging up the garden.
My job for you.
Yeah.
Because I have beautiful flowers at my farm. I don't want to leave them there.
Yeah. Okay. We'll
That's too much asking. What is the job?
I know you're going to be at every meeting reminding us.
Oh, yes.
You will be taken care of.
Thank you, sir.
With all that information on it? Yes.
And G, we'll have relocation.
It'll be part of your, all the information in this will be part of your relocation agreement. So you'll see what those responsibilities are, and we both sign that agreement.
Is it for each person, $50 or each
Good question.
That's a good question. I'll find out for you.
We get 4 people in the unit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So these are expectations of the people who live here. So we want that your tenancy is in good standing. So please, if it's not in good standing, start to deal with that now so that you're ready when it comes time for moving, particularly the people in phase 1. Participate and stay informed. So it's nice to see some new faces out tonight, and I hope that you'll continue to be with us. There have been people like Effie and Jeannie and Alan who have been at every single meeting and continue to remember exactly what we said at the last meeting, so that reinforcing the message.
We are recording everything.
So keep us and the co-op up to date on your address. Well, obviously they know your address, but your household size, whether you have special needs, whether there's any changes to your tenancy and your annual income information. Keep those things up to date, please. Follow the terms of your lease. When we offer you a relocation unit, please do everything by the deadline, because if somebody doesn't do it by the deadline, it creates a domino effect, and we need to keep the process moving. Provide TCHC access to your units to address any issues with pests if you have, so that you're not impacted by any pests in your unit, and leave your current unit in good condition. especially if you're in the north, where people might be using those for vacancies as transitional units. Obviously, the ones that are being demolished in the south are different. So, and for further information, David Spence, Jeffrey Cantos, myself, Vincent Tong, the counselor, the governor's assistant here. All right, and am I missing anybody? And Brian Sherwood and Roseanne, sorry, I'm going to mispronounce your name, but they're also working in the development division, and you'll be seeing them at meetings as well. Yeah.
I didn't know you got me there.
Oh, it was for animated training.
Yeah, but
Good questions. Good questions.
I didn't get to them. I had some questions and I had more.
Yeah. We will ask more questions later on.
We've heard that from a few people, Alan. How many people here actually got a notice in the mail about this meeting?
Not a lot of people.
Okay. How many didn't get notice? They heard from.
I guess I was the only one.
Okay, no, Alan too? No. Okay. Well,
I got it today, though, lastly. I received it.
Oh, it was the second one.
Still in my hand.
Oh.
After the noise I made.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. Well, we're sorry about that, and we'll make sure that we look at the list to make sure that all the addresses are correct. Any other questions?